Hey, it's Jay again, and winter is coming. In this day and age, when we think winter, we tend to think of things like a crackling fireplace with a warm beverage, maybe some hot cocoa and a good book. This was not always the case for people. Even today, there are people who can't afford to keep their houses as warm as they might like, right? How many times when you were a kid did your parents tell you, if you're cold, put on a sweater? The same was true 400 years ago as well. Between the early 1500s and the early 1600s, the price of firewood in England rose by nearly 10 times. And so, as the price of firewood went up, inflation became more general. We actually have people addressing Parliament. The House of Commons was told in 1572 that the rising cost of firewood was bringing up the prices of everything else with it. Part of the solution was to continue with a law that they had been using off and on since the Middle Ages called a curfew. Now today we know that a curfew is used to mean a time after which you're not allowed to be out and about, but historically a curfew, which comes from the French couvre-le-feu, literally cover the fire, was a law that said that you had to bank your fire, put it to bed at a certain time in the evening. So you didn't have that fire going to keep the house warm at night. The artifact that we're talking about today, something that is often overlooked, is this guy right here. What you're seeing is what's called in English a foot warmer. The Dutch often call it a foot stove, and we reference the Dutch specifically because they did a much better job of painting pictures of these things in use than So what we have is a wooden box, often very elaborately carved. Some of them are magnificent. And inside, a ceramic dish which would hold a layer of sand and then hot coals from your fire. So you would put the coals in here, you'd put that in. The vents on the top are going to allow the heat to come out of the box. The vents on the sides, and the fact that on ours one side is completely open, give it the air it needs for those coals to keep burning. A foot warmer like this is not intended to warm up a room, right? Don't think of a modern space heater. This is a personal heater. You're going to have this sitting on the floor. You may put your feet up on it. There's one quote from the 18th century that talks about how 17th century Dutch women were so accustomed to using foot warmers for the colder months of the year that they generally just used them year-round, even when they weren't warming, because they were used to having their feet elevated to that degree. The cost of firewood was not a problem here in Virginia, but they still had the same inefficient fireplaces that you had back in Europe. So heating a house was going to be very difficult, even in the best of times. And for instance, during the starving time, the winter of 1609, 1610, they talk about not being able to get out and get firewood. So they're actually resorting to things like tearing down empty buildings and burning part of the wall of the fort. If they had just had foot warmers with them, maybe they could have stayed a little bit warmer in the houses that they still had. Well, thanks for watching today. If you liked this video, click the like, share, and subscribe buttons, and don't forget to put on a sweater.